Jai Hind dear students, I am Dr. Preeti Mittal and today in this video we are going to learn about the transportation of blood in human beings. If the question comes to you in your exam that explain the transportation of blood in human beings, you have to explain this. Even if you are asked that explain the transportation of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the blood, then also you have to explain this only. Okay, so if there is any question asking you about the transportation, you have to give this type of explanation. Even if you are asked about double circulation, the answer would be the same. So just let's discuss about the transportation. Human beings have a four-chambered heart. The chambers are right atrium, left atrium, right ventricle, and left ventricle. The right side of the heart is having deoxygenated blood, and the left side of the heart is having oxygenated blood. Now, in case if you have any confusion about it, if you just get confused that which side of the heart is having which type of blood, then just remember Lord. भगवान को याद करना, याद आ जाएगा. How God is going to help you out. Remember Lord, left side is oxygenated, right side is deoxygenated. So by the word Lord, you can remember that the right side of the blood, right side of the heart is having deoxygenated blood, and the left side of the heart is having the oxygenated blood. So now let's see how the circulation is happening. Now, from the whole body, whatever the body is consuming all the oxygen from the blood and it's creating the deoxygenated blood having carbon dioxide, that carbon dioxide containing deoxygenated blood comes to the right atrium. It comes to the right atrium of the heart from both the vena cava. Two huge veins are there, they are known as vena cava. So upper vena cava brings the blood from the upper part of the body and lower vena cava brings the blood from the lower part of the body, and they both join into the right atrium. Now when the right atrium is full, it contracts and pushes the blood into the right ventricle. By this time the right ventricle remains relaxed to receive the blood from the right atrium. Now when the right ventricle is full, then the right ventricle starts contracting. When it starts contracting, this valve you can see, this valve is present between the right atrium and the right ventricle. This valve is going to close so as to prevent the backflow of the blood from the right ventricle to the from the right ventricle to the right atrium. There should not be any backflow of blood, and to prevent this, these valves are there. So the right ventricle contracts and pushes the blood passing through the pulmonary artery to the lungs. So these pulmonary arteries are going to take the blood to the lungs. In the lungs, the blood will get oxygenated, and this oxygenated blood will come back to the heart because it has to be circulated to the body. So it comes back to the heart passing through the pulmonary vein. Now, pulmonary vein is the only vein of your body that is carrying oxygenated blood. Okay, then pulmonary vein brings the blood to the left atrium. Then from the left atrium, the blood goes to the left ventricle. Now when the left ventricle contracts, then the blood passes to the aorta, and passing through the aorta it reaches to each and every cell of our body. Okay, so the left ventricle contracts. When the left ventricle contracts, the wall between left atrium and ventricle is going to be closed, and here you can see these lines. These lines are the muscles that helps in the closing and opening of these valves. Okay, so these lines are helping in the closing and opening of the valves. So from the left ventricle, the blood passes to the aorta, and passing through the aorta, it reaches to each and every cell of our body. In this complete circulation, the blood is passing through the heart twice. Once coming from the body and second time coming from the lungs. Since the blood is passing twice through the heart, it is known as double circulation. This is known as double circulation. To express double circulation, we draw a diagram like this. Okay, so I'll explain you this as well, but this is known as double circulation. Apart from that, the atrium have to push the blood just to the ventricles, which are just present below that only. But the ventricle, especially the left ventricle, has to push the blood to the whole body. So the left ventricular muscles needs to be really strong, and that is why left ventricle has the thickest muscles, and the atrium, both the atrium are having going to have thin muscle wall. The wall of the heart is made up of muscles, and these muscles are thinner in case of atrium and thicker in case of ventricles. Both the ventricles have thicker walls and both the atrium have thinner walls. And the maximum thickness of walls here, the walls, okay, the walls are in the left ventricle. Okay, so this is how double circulation takes place. Now you could be like once more we are going to discuss the whole blood double circulation through this diagram. So from the whole body the blood comes passing through the vena cava to right atrium, from right atrium to right ventricle, from right ventricle it passes to the lungs passing through the pulmonary artery. In the lungs the blood is going to get oxygenated. This oxygenated blood comes back passing through the pulmonary veins to the left atrium. From the left atrium it will go to left ventricle, and from left ventricle, when the left ventricle is going to contract, it will push the blood to the aorta, and from the aorta it is going to different arteries of the body and finally reaching to each and every cell of the body, passing through the different arteries. Okay, so this is how double circulation takes place. So if you are asked to draw the diagram of internal structure of heart, you have to draw this. But if you are asked to draw a diagram showing double circulation, then you have to draw this diagram. Okay, so both the diagrams as well as this question is really very important for your exams. Now, if we talk about that, one more type of question could be there in your exam, that why birds and mammals have double circulation. Why birds and mammals have a four-chambered heart. So, birds and mammals have a four-chambered heart because we are warm-blooded organisms. Human beings, mammals, all the birds are warm-blooded. That is, we maintain a constant body temperature. To maintain a constant body temperature, a lot of energy is required by the body, and for that increased energy demand of the body needs to be supplied with completely oxygenated blood only. There should be no intermixing of the blood. And to prevent this intermixing of the blood, we have a four-chambered heart. Okay, do you know reptiles, amphibians, they have a three-chambered heart. They have two atrium and one ventricle. So when the blood comes into the ventricle, the blood gets mixed. The oxygenated and deoxygenated blood gets mixed. And so there is the body that is supplied with the blood that is not completely oxygenated only. It is a mixture of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. Okay, so they too have double circulation. They too have that the blood passes through the heart twice before passing to the body, but they are having mixed kind of blood supply. Fishes are really very interesting in this regard. Fishes just have a two-chambered heart, but still their body is supplied with completely oxygenated blood only. How come the body is managing with this completely oxygenated blood only? The blood passes from the body to the atrium, then to the ventricle. After passing through the ventricle, it goes to the lungs, to the gills, where it gets oxygenated, and directly from the gills itself, it is going back to the body. So, in case of fishes, there is just a two-chambered heart, but still they are supplied with completely oxygenated blood only. Okay, if you want to take a screenshot of this diagram, you can just take, I am just shift to side. I hope you have taken a screenshot. So that was about double circulation, and that was about the circulation of blood in human beings. Okay, now in the transportation system only, you could be asked about some other questions as well, that is about blood pressure, about arteries, veins, platelets and lymph. Now let's discuss that. First, talking about the blood pressure. What is blood pressure? When the blood is moving in the vessels, then it is going to exert a lateral pressure on the walls of the blood vessels. This pressure exerted by the blood on the vessel's wall is known as blood pressure. Okay, when the ventricles are contracting, that contraction is known as systole, and the blood pressure at the time of ventricular contraction is known as systolic blood pressure, and normal systolic blood pressure is 120 millimeter of mercury. 120 millimeter of mercury is a normal systolic blood pressure. When the ventricles are relaxing, then the blood pressure is lower, and that is known as diastolic blood pressure. Diastole means relaxation of ventricles. So diastolic blood pressure is lower, and normal diastolic blood pressure is 80 mm of mercury. Why we are calling mercury? Because it is there in the instrument used to measure blood pressure. And the instrument used to measure blood pressure is known as sphygmomanometer. 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 By that you can break the spelling and learn that. So sphygmomanometer is an instrument that is used to measure the normal blood pressure or even the high blood pressure. Okay. What could be the consequences of high blood pressure, and what is high blood pressure known as? High blood pressure is known as hypertension. You must have heard now that a person is having hypertension. So when the blood pressure is higher than the normal, it's known as hypertension. And if there is hypertension, that could lead to rupture of blood vessels in any parts of the body. So that could be really serious. Okay. So one of the consequences of high blood pressure or hypertension is rupture of blood vessels. If the blood pressure is lower than normal, that is known as hypotension. Okay. Now, if we talk about arteries, veins, and capillaries, that is about the blood vessels. Okay. So, the normal blood pressure is 120 by 80 mm of Hg. 120 by 80 mm of Hg means that systolic is 120 and diastolic blood pressure is 80 mm of Hg. Okay. Now, coming to the blood vessels. The blood vessels that are there in our body are arteries, veins, and capillaries. Especially, you should know to differentiate between the arteries and the veins also. So, what are arteries and veins? The arteries are having a thicker wall. Now, understand that logically, you need not learn that up. You need not mug it up if you understand that. So, arteries are having thick walls because they have the blood under high pressure that is coming from the heart. The heart is pushing the blood. So, the blood is under high pressure, and so the arteries have a thick walls so that they can withstand that much pressure. The walls of the arteries are thicker so that they can just bear that much of pressure. If we talk about veins, the walls of the veins are thin. They need not be very thick, है ना? If the pressure of the water in any of the like pipe is very high, the pipe need to be strong. But if the pressure is very low, the pipe need not be very strong. You can use a thin pipe also. Similarly for that. Okay. Now, the second difference is arteries usually carry oxygenated blood, but only exception is pulmonary artery that is carrying the oxygenated blood. And why we are calling it as an artery? That lies in the answer lies in the definition of an artery. An artery is a blood vessel that carries the blood away from heart. So any blood vessel that is carrying the blood away from heart is artery. A blood vessel that is carrying the blood towards the heart is known as a vein. So this pulmonary vein is a vein. In spite of having oxygenated blood, pulmonary vein is called a vein because any blood vessel that is bringing the blood towards the heart is called a vein. So that is the second difference. That is the definition of the two. Now, the third one is that the arteries usually carry oxygenated blood except pulmonary artery. The veins usually carry deoxygenated blood except for pulmonary vein. The fourth difference is arteries usually don't have valves in them and the veins have a valve that prevents the backflow of the blood. For example, if we consider the veins that are bringing the blood from the legs towards the heart, so the blood has to be carried anti-gravity, and the gravity will be pulling the blood downwards. So at every time the blood will be trying to go in the downward direction, but that will be prevented by the valves present in the veins. So the valves are present in the veins that prevents the blood from going in the backward direction. Okay, so that is about arteries and veins. Now what are capillaries? Capillaries are just having are very thin vessels, very thin. So from the aorta the blood goes to different arteries, but now this blood has to reach to each and every cell of the body, and this each and every cell of the body is supplied by very thin blood vessels known as capillaries. Do you know how thin they are? The capillaries are just having the walls that are just one cell thick. So just one layer of cells is there on the walls of the capillaries. They are so thin, and these capillaries easily provide the diffusion of oxygen to the cells, and from the cells carbon dioxide passes to the capillaries. Okay, so on one end the capillaries are connected to the artery, and the other end of the capillaries is connected to the veins. So from the artery it will reach to each and every cell of the body, supply the oxygenated blood to them, and become deoxygenated and carry this deoxygenated blood to the veins. So it's like a connecting link between the artery and the veins. Okay, I hope that is clear. Now next comes the platelets. These capillaries are so thin that even when you touch your skin like this, you are going to rupture some of your capillaries. Whenever we are even moving our fingers, then also we can rupture some of our capillaries, because these capillaries are very delicate. These capillaries are having just one cell thick cell wall. So who is going to repair that? The repair of these capillaries will be at first done by the platelets. Platelets are very important to prevent the escape of blood from the ruptured capillaries. So whenever the capillaries get ruptured, immediately the platelets which are present in the blood that comes and seal this portion from wherever the rupture was there. Okay, so this ruptured part of the blood vessels will be repaired by the platelets, and platelets play a very important role in clotting of blood. So you don't bleed very easily, the blood gets clotted, and one of the factors that is helping in the clotting of blood is platelets. Okay, now let's talk about blood in general. What are the components of blood vessels we have seen, and now let's see about the components of blood. Blood consists of mainly two parts. One is the fluid part of the blood, that is known as plasma. That is the fluid part of the blood. And the other is cells that are present in the blood. Which cells are present? The RBC, that is the red blood cells, WBC, the white blood cells, and the third one is platelets, about which we have seen just now only. Okay, so these are the components of blood. The fluid part of the blood is known as plasma. That can come as a 1 marks question. Okay, now coming to the last topic from this transportation topic, that is lymph. Before understanding lymph, just now let us study about the structure of a tissue. So if we talk about a tissue, there are different cells in a tissue. These are some of the cells, but there is some space between the cells, and the space is known as intercellular space. Okay, now what happens? The capillaries provide the blood supply to the cells and take the deoxygenated blood, that is the carbon dioxide waste what is produced in the cells, that is taken up by the capillaries only. But now the fluid is present in this extracellular space or intercellular space also. This space is having some fluid, and that is known as tissue fluid because it's present in tissue. So that fluid is known as tissue fluid. Now this tissue fluid also needs to be circulated. How it is circulated? What happens in from the capillaries only, some fluid oozes out, bahar aa jata hai, and that forms the tissue fluid. Now this tissue fluid cannot enter back the capillaries because it's not having that much pressure to enter again into the capillaries. So it can't enter back into the capillaries. So where it will be going? It will be going to some lymph vessels. This fluid, this tissue fluid, will be going from this space to the lymph vessels. And these lymph vessels will be sending this tissue fluid into the veins only. So it will enter the main circulation through that. Okay. So from the tissue fluid will be going to lymph vessels. From lymph vessels, it will be going back into the veins. These lymph vessels are especially important in case of small intestine. In small intestine, you all know that there is absorption of different materials, including fats. So this absorbed material containing the fats goes into the lymph capillaries there, and these lymph capillaries ultimately open into the veins. Okay, so that can also come as 1 mark question because these lymph capillaries have a special name and all. In case of small intestine, that's not there in your book, so we are not going to that. But just remember that from the small intestine, the lymph vessels carries the fats, absorbed fats and other nutrients to the lymph capillaries, and from lymph capillaries it is going to the veins. Okay, so that's all about the double circulation. That's all about the transportation of blood in human beings. I hope the topic is clear to you all. If you have any queries, just let me know about it in the comment section. I would be glad to see your comments. Okay, so if you like the video, then just also mention that in the comment, and if you just don't like something about it, then also just let me know. Okay, thank you so much. Just keep on studying, and that's all for today. Good day everyone.